All right. So now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to set up the lighting rig, the light studio here. So that's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. And so I'm going to add and make sure that I'm in object mode. This is important. Otherwise, you'll be adding this cube to whatever you were in edit mode on. Click add mesh cube. Um, a number that works good for me in all of these has been scaling it to 16 in X, Y, and Z. So I scaled it up to 16 in X, in Y, and in Z. It's a good starting point. Okay, it's not the ending point, but it's a good starting point. And I'm going to immediately switch to edit mode, face selection, and I'm going to select those two faces and these side faces. Hit my delete key on the keyboard and delete the faces. And then I will go back to object mode just for a moment, move this whole thing up. Let's see, oh, too far. I want my plane to be just a little bit above that. I give myself a little more space. I'm going to scale that in X and scale that in Y. So now if I zoom in on my aircraft and see it from kind of a side angle, all I see is backdrop. Um, this would be a good moment since I like this angle right here. It shows off my plane the way I'm going to want it to look like when I have a camera on this. So I'm going to add a camera. And while the camera is selected, I'm going to click View, Align View, Align Active Camera to View. And just like that, I'll have a camera aligned to my view. I'm going to adjust a little bit on the positioning here. Let's see, I have to play around with this. Let me see, what does Y do? Y, adjusting it in Y, kind of centered everything a little bit better. What about X? X moves it back a little bit. You have to kind of experiment with it with the controls, and then Z will move it up and down. And I want it, I'd like to have that framed really, really well. So by fine tune adjusting your X, Y, and Z positions, you might even adjust the rotations to get it just right. The camera's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to get out of the camera view. Got a camera. This cube that I put in, which is really going to be my backdrop. I'll name that object, so it's named backdrop. Scroll down to the materials button down here, and I'm going to add a new material, which I will call my, let me pull this out so I can see it. Let me slide that over. I'm going to call it backdrop matte. Put the matte down because it's short for materials. And I'm going to assign a color to it. Maybe something in the light blue range. No, that matches with my canopy. How about something in the green range? Yeah, I'll go with that. Something in a light green. Usually backdrops are some light color. All right, got my backdrop in there. Now I need some lights. I'm going to use spotlights like I did with my humaniform. So I'm going to add a light, a spotlight, and this immediately gets placed at 000 facing down. So I'm going to move it up. And so I can see my light, I need to turn on scene lights and scene world. And here I am in the darkness. Down here on the object data properties, I'm going to change that from 10 watts, which is basically nothing, to like 12,000 watts. And now I've got some light shining. But I don't necessarily want to light this directly from above. So I am going to grab the little blue square there on the moved gizmo and move the light right over about right here. And I'd like to move it down. I don't want it quite so high up. Move it down. Then I'm going to switch to the rotate tool. And in the y-axis, I'm going to rotate it up so it's aimed about like that. In the z-axis, I'm going to rotate it around. And now I'm going to adjust it in z and in y, adjusting the positioning of my light in the z-axis, and that's the blue circle, and y, which is the green circle. And then I'm going to press 0 on my number pad so I can see what is this looking like in the camera view. And how do I feel about 12,000 watts? What's 15,000 watts look like? All right. Now, that's going to be my main light. Mr. Booth, shame on you. Look at all these cylinders. That's like, I'm going to have to fix all those cylinders up. Got a cylinder right there. That's going to be weapon 1. And weapon 2. And then engine left 2. And engine right 2. I do say I want you to name all your objects, so I better name all my objects. That spotlight. That spotlight's going to get named light, key light. And I like to name all my lights starting off with light so that when I'm looking at it in my hierarchy, they're all going to be right next to each other in the hierarchy. And then I'm going to go copy that light. So I'm going to go Shift D, no, Control D to copy it, hit Escape, tilt my way out of here, grab my Move tool. I'm going to move that light over to here, swing it around in Z. Now we're lighting the other side. I'm going to bring it down a little bit lower than my key light and tilt it up in Y. All right, now I'm going to switch back to my camera view. The fill light should definitely not be, and this one is going to be my light fill light. Shouldn't be 15,000 watts. I'm going to bring it down to about 1,000 watts. And then let me see how that looks. And I want to turn it off and turn it on and see. Yeah, maybe I might raise it up a little bit. 2,500 watts. I want it to fill a little more. And turning it off and turning it on to see what effect it has. And yeah, it is having an effect. It's bringing up some of the metallic shininess on the body right here. It's the canopy is really dark, but with the fill light on, the canopy gets lit up. It's still got a shadow, but it's not so strong. So happy with my fill light. I'm noticing that my target for my spotlight is really not right on my plane. So I'm going to adjust that a little bit. Got to tilt out of this. Okay. Kind of wonky. There we go. All right. I like that better. Go back to my camera and zoom in on this and see how that's looking. Okay, messing with my fill light. Yeah, nice. I like the way the shadows are now. Better. So I've got my fill light in here. Gotcha. Next, I'm going to duplicate my key light again. I'm going to move it around behind my aircraft now. So behind the aircraft, I'm going to move it down. It's not, of course, it's not pointed in the right direction just yet. And I'm really not lined up with my aircraft. But you want your rim light needs to be from the back of whatever you're lighting. That's the whole idea behind it. So I've got it positioned right now. I need to swing it around here, swing it around on the x-axis, and I'm kind of going in the right direction. Man, I got that lined up pretty good. Bring it up. Oh, going the wrong direction. And I grabbed the wrong control there. I'll get the green. There we go. Shining from the back. Now let's see how it's looking from the camera. Oh, and it's in, let's see, 15,000. That's going to be about too much. 1,000 is too little. Throw another 0 on there. Still pretty darn bright. It's really got the tail. It's too illuminated on the tail. So I'm going to move it up a little bit, move it back, and then tilt it down. Still getting too much light here on the ground underneath it. So at some point, I'm going to have to make a decision about how I'm going to handle this. Can I live with that? I'm going to have to live with that. All right. So I feel like I got my lights in here, and I'm going to do an incremental save. Hit the plus symbol. Now, for my animation for this one, I'm going to animate like I did with the other flying vehicle. I'm going to animate the vehicle doing a 360-degree rotation. So for that, for animating a 360-degree rotation, it can be helpful initially to hide all your lights, hide your camera, and because everything gets really dark here, I'm going to hide the backdrop. I'm going to hide all that stuff. And so you can see, you can turn back on the default lighting from Blender, and then we're going to create, like we did previously, I'm going to click Add an Empty, and I'm going to add an empty plane axes. Grab the Move tool, and I'm going to move this up right above my plane. And I'm going to name this thing Parent Object. So now it's my parent object. Then I'm going to, with my mouse over the scene, I'm going to press the A key. Pressing the A key is how you select all. Press down my Shift key, select the parent object, deselect it. So I deselected the parent object. It's still got an orange dot, which means Blender's remembering the last thing that I had selected before I deselected it. Everything else is selected. And I'm going to click Object, Parent, Object. And when I do this, I'm going to get a bunch of strings down to the aircraft. Don't worry about the number of strings. To check that what you did worked, select the parent object and get the Rotate tool. When you click the Rotate tool, does your object rotate? If it does, you did it right. Okay? So now my object is ready to rotate. Now I can go and turn my scene lights back on, unhide my backdrop, my camera, and all of my lights. I'm also going to notice there's been a change in my hierarchy. Where did all my objects go? All my objects went inside of the parent object, because the parent object is now in charge of what happens to all that other stuff. So I got my parent object selected here. I want to be in my camera view, so that's going to be pressing 0 on my number pad. And I want to start to keyframe this. I'm only going to be keyframing rotation. That's all I'm going to keyframe is rotation. So with my mouse over the scene, my time slider over here on frame 1, my end set to 240 because I'm going to make a 10-second animation. So the end is set to 240. Start with my time slider on frame 1. I mouse over the scene and press the I key on my keyboard, and I want a keyframe rotation. If I look at the control over here, the object properties, I'll see that rotation is now keyframed for that gizmo. Then I'm going to move it all the way out to frame 240. And I'm going to physically just put a number right in there for Z. I'm going to rotate in Z 359 degrees. I'll mouse over the scene, press the I key, and I'm going to insert a key for rotation. Now, if I press the play button, I should see now that my aircraft does a full rotation. I get to see how light plays off of it while it's doing that full rotation. But at the very end, there's a little glitch, and that's because I had to trick Blender into almost rotating a full circle. I have discovered that if you try to rotate 360 degrees, you're landing right where you started, and Blender doesn't catch that. But now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to be back on frame 240, click into Z, and instead of going from frame 0 to 360, now I'm going from frame 359 to frame 360, or rather from 359 degrees to 360 degrees, and I've tricked Blender. Now it wants a 360 degree rotation. Mouse over and press I, keyframe the rotation to overwrite that previous key, and now it does a nice, smooth 360 degree rotation with no glitch at the very end. So there's one thing I want to do here before I actually render my animation. I notice while it's rotating, the nose gets cut off by the frame of the camera. The wing gets cut off by the frame of the camera. This is only happening on that side, the right-hand side. The left-hand side's handling it really good. So I'm going to kind of adjust my camera positioning. So I'm going to select my camera and going to move my camera. Let's see, it was X moved me back a little bit. X moves me back. Y moves me left, right. Let me see how that looks. My tail went off screen still too. So with X, I'll move back a little bit more. And with Y, I'll move a little bit to the right. Let me see how it's looking now. Oh, now my left wing is right to the edge. Yeah, I can live with that. Nothing's now. I'm not chopping off large pieces of my aircraft by the way that I had it framed. And when I spin, it almost all is staying in. I could adjust it just a little bit more if I wanted to be super precise. It moves backward with X and a little bit to, well, that's Z booth. Y. Let me see how that's looking now. Yeah, everything's staying in. I just get right up to the edge. All right, so I'm pleased with what I just did. One last thing I might do is not move it up. There we go, just to have it more centered in the view. Pretty happy with it now. Fine-tuned everything. I'm ready to go ahead and render it. So I'm going to click render. Oh, I got things I got to set up. Almost forgot. Over here, I need to set up my output location. for my animation that I'll make. And that's going to go, let me see if I can sneaky get there. That's second block. It's my fourth flyer. It's what I'm working on right now. I need a new folder in here. And this one's going to be my renders. I'm going to select that folder and I'll click accept. I've now set my path. I'm going to store this in my renders folder. The file type is going to be an FFmpeg video. And then we set the encoding from Matroska to MPEG-4. And then we come up here and hit the render button and render animation. And the renderer will do its thing. All right, and now that is done. Did you catch that I paused the video? So I'll go ahead and close that out. It's done rendering. If I go to my fourth block folder here for my flyer, I'll see now I've got my renders folder in there, and there's my video. I can double click that and check it out in Windows Media Player and see what it looks like as my MP4. It's actually kind of a small file and looking pretty good. Close that out. And then the last thing you got to do to prepare for like what you're going to put up on Weebly is going to be to get some still images. So that's just basically picking an angle, like maybe that angle right there. And I'm going to click render, render image. This is only going to render just that one frame. And I'll click on image, save as, and let's see, in the wrong folder. It's fourth block though. Flyer, renders. Okay, there's my fourth block. And let's see, the name of my file is going to be flyer underbar 1. That's what I'm going to name it. And so I'll click save as an image. So that's one image saved. I'll move my time slider to another spot in my timeline. And click on render, render image. Look at it, looks good. Click on image, save as. Now here I can just click the little plus symbol. It's going to change this one now from flyer underbar 1 to flyer underbar 2. And I'll click save image. And I've got my renders. They're here in my folder. And now they're all ready for me to get them up onto Weebly, into my web page. And that'll complete this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe.